Hi, my name is Austin Davis, and I'd like to begin by making it clear that although this is an academic setting, this is going to be academic work. There may or may not be moments throughout the video in which I am a little bit more informal. That is so I'm a little bit more relaxed. This may be a little bit more relatable for you guys, a little bit more enjoyable. So the topic that I'm going to be covering is Huey Newton. He kind of emphasizes a lesser I don't know how to articulate it, lesser explored piece of American history, and which, ironically, is one that we're all familiar with, and that is the Black Panther Party. Um, Overall, in essence, he had great intellectual aptitude. He was highly involved politically, as well as in social ideologies and discourse. He grew up in America. Just to go kind of his backstory, he grew up. He was most prominent in the mid to late '60s, early '70s. Black Panther Party, I believe, was all the way up to the late '80s. So we can presume when he was a child was probably around the 40s, 50s. And I'm sure you're all aware that white supremacy was actually a notable thing at that time. Uh, Blacks were not treated nearly as equally. I know racism is a hot topic debate as it is now, but things have changed. I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that we're in a excellent place or things that shouldn't change, but I'm sure you guys get the idea. It wasn't a fun time growing up for blacks in the 40s, 50s, even 60s, 70s. And Newton himself was constantly bombarded with the notion of his own inadequacy. He was constantly faced with assaults on his own self esteem. He was even led to the conflation that to be black is to be stupid. His teachers, who were supposed to be his role models and his mentors, lied to him and said that he had an IQ of 74, which is just absurd to think that a teacher would ever tell a child that. And as a consequence, he was even persuaded to not go to college again. Teacher persuading student not to go to college. I'm not going to go too deep into that. That just blows my mind. So, having been bullied for so long intellectually, it wasn't until 17 that he even learned to read. Uh, but little did his tormentors, the people who were putting him down, know that they were actually igniting a fire in this child. They were building motivation to essentially rebel. As we all know, when somebody tells us we can't do something, we often want to do that thing. So this created resistance for Newton. And Personally, what I'm about to say, I just absolutely love. What he did is he got himself a copy of Plato's Republic in a dictionary because he was illiterate. And I don't know if any of you guys know, but Plato's Republic is one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written. Plato himself, one of the greatest philosophers, one of the greatest minds to have ever existed on the place of the earth, on the face of the earth. But I digress. Plato's Republic essentially opened up an entire new world for Huey. A world based on objective reasoning, ideological discourse, and a form of philosophical and political arguments acting as material to fuel the development of new modes of thinking, outlooks, tools for reasoning, contemplation, and a sense of purpose, which could be argued that that was the whole purpose of Plato himself in all of his work, in all of his predecessors, such as Socrates. As a consequence, Huey developed a love for learning. And he himself said, I found myself enjoying the learning process and tremendously stimulated by the ideas I encountered. By the way, just so you know, that is a quote of his. I don't want to, what's the word? I can't believe, I can't believe I can't think of it. Doesn't matter. So through further academic pursuits, essentially Huey came through this pivotal realization, and as you guys have all probably been able to figure out, all his teachers were lying to him. Took Huey 18 years of existence for him to realize I've been lied to this whole time. I am not an idiot. I am not incapable of reason. I'm not incapable of being an outstanding uh, intellectual, essentially. And it was this critical realization that led him to the profound notion that the nature of the United States education system was unwaveringly opposed to the self-actualization, self-government, and overall autonomy, as well as mental and spiritual growth of the African American. Uh, I'm sure this rings a bell for some of you, as we actually went over why the public school system exists, what it was created for here in America. So this shouldn't come as a surprise. So Newton basically believed that this was due to the status quo, insofar that the upper class, as we all know, needed competent workers and therefore required certain facts. Yet it would be detrimental to provide said students with the appropriate ideological basis in which they'd be able to resist and basically combat the status quo out of existence. It would be a problem if the people that they relied on were able to objectively be aware of the issue and change it. Uh, Hint, hint, something for all of us to contemplate, maybe. We'll see. So essentially, Newton formed a vision that he needed to form a new institute of learning and schooling for the Black America at this time. So in 1971, he established the Educational Opportunities Corporation, in which effectively funded the Black Panther Party schools. Um, and it was an unquestionable success. I mean, he was later awarded a special award from the California legislature in 1977 for effectively implementing the highest level of elementary education statewide. By the way, just to digress again for a moment, it begs the question: state-run schools, privately run schools, which one? Some of you will know what I'm asking. So back then, I mean, if this is a revolutionary concept now, we can only imagine how revolutionary the concept that was back then. And that he essentially therefore extrapolated on that the perspective of those who are oppressed and therefore marginalized paint a more comprehensive picture of the social ethos than that of the ruling class. That in order to understand the problems of those people who are suffering, we should probably ask them and not ask the people who are hurting them. You know, the two sides of every argument type deal. But generally, when we're talking about this, it's rather one sided. So he spent a notable amount of his time interacting with the community. He literally went door to door asking people, what do you need? What do you think? How do you feel about our political standing? How do you feel about yourself as an individual? What do you think you need to succeed? What do you think your child needs? What do your grandparents need? He went and found out, literally, again, door to door. This speaks out to the heart of every entrepreneur out there. They got where they needed to go by literally going door to door and trying to sell or trying to buy. Um, so it was this role that he took upon himself, uh, and essentially actualizing these realizations he had, that he and the party in which he also utilized as a way to carry out his needs and wants, was literally affording lunches to children. He I don't have the numbers on me right here, but it's actually quite remarkable the amount of kids that he himself, because of his own political and ideological standing, was able to afford to children. And it didn't end there. He provided health care to those in need. Um, so he, again, utilized the party, as well as he mobilized concerned citizens to aid in this project. Their combined efforts, provided by a pool of self-concerned, committed young people, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, often working with neighborhood grocers, educators, as well as other activists and even ministers who were interested. So Newton and his people brought together an entire community with vast ties in the service of one common good, to serve those in need. The Black Panther Party transcended some mere political organization or some niche ideology in which a lot of us have been brought up to believe, but was tied to a rich community, one that was looking out for one another, trying to uplift themselves in other and rather turbulent times. as we all know. Um, but beyond that, he further took an approach to actually physically defend his brothers and sisters within his community. He wasn't a political pundit. He wasn't somebody, some idealistic ideologue. He he took to the streets, and if he saw that the police were mistreating his African American brothers and sisters, he literally fought off the police. It's rather remarkable, if you ask me. This tyrannical police force, he himself went to the streets as a one-man army and fought them off. Uh, I don't know. That just it speaks to me a lot, and I have so much respect for that. So what I'm going to get to is one occasion wasn't the best outcome, but it was the most memorable and historical, and actually the most remarkable when speaking of the subject. As he found himself in a gunfight with two white police officers. Uh, Newton ended up killing one of them. How that particularly happened, I'm not entirely certain. The other severely injured, and Newton having suffered from multiple gunshots. So again, I'm gonna digress for a minute. Can we all just sit here and appreciate that for a second? Just soaking in everything I've said so far. Regardless of the context of what happened, he fought two police officers. He was shot multiple times. His life was at risk. His life, after the fact, before the fact, and during it all, was at risk. They had guns. He did not. He ended up killing one, not saying that's good, severely wounding another, and then coming out of it having been shot 5 times. And spoiler alert, he survived. Again, forget the moral ambiguity. That is just unbelievable to me. Again, as I said, I warned you guys I may be informal at times. I am just blown away by all this. This isn't me pretending I like some assignment. This is just mind-boggling stuff to me. Really remarkable. As somebody who has been training hand-to-hand combat for over 11 years, was a full-time fighter, fought for the U.S., all that jazz and whatnot. This story is just blows me away. But back to the main point. Um, Essentially, this, of course, as you can imagine, black man kills a police officer, other one severely injured, needing medical care. Of course, Huey went to jail. He was jailed. And unforeseen to any and all at that time, it served as a prelude for arguably the most important transition in this whole story. Um, he essentially served as a martyr. The Black Panther Party portrayed Newton as a symbol of everything that they were fighting for and fighting against, while simultaneously refuting the claims that he was a criminal. So basically, the sensationalism of Newton brought the parties and the African American community's struggle of against white supremacy into the forefront. And it not only brought more attention to Newton's case, in which he needed, because black man kills police officer without any media coverage. I mean, who's going to win that one? I don't think who's going to win that one. But it brought a lot of attention to the party itself as well. Even, Newton, I haven't said yet, but Newton was a co-founder. It was him and predominantly a man named Bobby Seale. Bobby Seale later admitted after the fact that at that point, the Black Panther Party had totally fallen apart. It didn't exist. So prior to Newton's arrest and prior to all of this noise, I don't want to say it that way, sorry, but prior to all of that, I mean, it was on its last legs. It was done. We probably wouldn't even have heard about it today if it wasn't for this very moment, for what I am about to describe. But the media coverage and activism promoted in favor of Huey resulted in this massive campaign, as well as mass support for the Black Panther Party. The numbers involved in the party, are impossible to ascertain. I mean, really, how you can't really exactly know how many numbers there were. But it's been historically noted that the membership increased exponentially between October 1967 and November 1968, all because of this. The campaign behind Free Huey, the movement, involved three integral steps, and these were rather ingenious. The first was to, I like this one the best, was to maintain present at all court proceedings in order to assure Huey that the party had not forgotten about him. You take care of your members. It was all about brotherhood. It was all about solidarity. All of this, the black activism, the essence of it was to liberate, to take care of, and to ensure the safety of their people. So, step one, to me, perfect. The second was to remind the court itself that the Black Panther Party was watching, a little like the police patrols used to do in black neighborhoods or in other political rallies. They used to patrol basically to say, hey guys, we're here, we're watching. You better not make any mistakes or we're going to be there to deal with it. So that's what they did. With all the court proceedings, they would go there in mass and let the judge and everybody know, we're here, we're watching. Better not be any funny business or we're going to make a big deal out of it. And then the third was essentially their overwhelming presence ensured mass publicity by the press. I mean, you can't argue with that. Excellent approach. I mean, it was a three-step plan that could only lead in success, but we'll get to that. So this image, it's rather interesting because the image actually portrayed to the press an illusion. It created this illusion to the people that the Black Panther Party membership was much larger than it actually was, therefore giving them a lot more attention, just giving them a lot more significance. I mean, we all know when it comes to political ideologies, we hear a lot of claims, a lot of noise, and it. Just to give an example, we hear things on Twitter, and it generally comes down to the minority being the loudest. But that doesn't mean that they're the majority, yet we associate significance to that because we hear it. We know of it. So just that step of making it seem like they were bigger than they were, that more people shared that opinions, applied more significance to their movement. So incidentally, Newton's arrest led to this mass rallying cry in solidarity amongst the party. As a consequence, it drastically increased its recruits, and again, another consequence is political power, cementing itself as a serious political party in the 60s. As I've said earlier, we all know of it. I mean, do any of us not know of the Black Panther Party? Does anybody in the first world not know of the Black Panther Party? They don't exist today. They don't have serious political influence today, but no, it was because of what I am describing. It was the significance of the events that I've been describing. Essentially, the growing presence of the party was not without consequences, though. As I just said, they don't exist today, and that is for a reason that I'm about to get into. So, with the growing of the party, intelligence agencies basically feared the ramifications of such a group. As I said, African Americans were not exactly tolerated well at this time. So the FBI increased its involvements in the matter. Side note, I implore all of you to look into the FBI and the CIA and maybe question if they should or shouldn't exist. So, not to get too off a topic. So essentially, the Free Huey campaign itself and the results of the movement affirmed to the FBI that the Black Panther Party needed to be neutralized. So the campaign mobilized into mass rallies and political efforts, in which were all monitored by the FBI. And it was as simple as this. The idea was the FBI was attempting to avoid the rise of a black messiah. That was their fear. They were afraid of a black messiah. I love that analogy, by the way, a black messiah. They were afraid of one black man leading all the other black men and women to freedom. One man for them all to stand behind and for all of them to give their undevoted support to. They were afraid of that. So they made consistent efforts to disrupt political rallies, party communication, press conferences, or otherwise any advancements the Black Party Black Panther Party could potentially make as a result of the FBI's counterintelligence, their adamant disruption, as well as actual physical assaults, coupled with the Black Panther Party's own structural weaknesses to hobble the organization. It led to a massive decline in the subsequent years. At the time, the Black Panther Party, as I said, prior to the movement, they were on their last legs. So even though they had more members and everything, it wasn't as though they were in it's not as though their infrastructure was as strong as it could have been. So was some weaknesses that the FBI could capitalize on. And I mean, the FBI has been taking down governments. So again, not to digress too much. So I don't see them having too big of an issue with the political organization. Within America, that was also more of a niche political organization. So although indirectly the movement started as a result of Newton being imprisonment, brought the party into the limelight, it resulted in government intervention that led to its decline. This is completely indirect, so there's nobody at fault here aside from the people, the aggressors themselves, such as the FBI and white supremacy and all of that. But the events that I just described led to its decline. It's why it doesn't exist today. But so the question is is it Huey's fault at all? But the counter to that is rather simple and concise. I mean, Newton, in any case, had great influence on black activism, and he had a great mind. He became notably involved within the black community, and he served it valiantly. He put food on the table for those who needed it. He brought medicine to the sick. He sat down, went door to door, listened to their problems, and attempted to solve their needs. I don't care what happened after that. I'm not arguing with that. I cannot say he did anything wrong. He got in a fight with some police officers. Maybe there were some circumstances in which he could have gone about it better, but I don't care. He was a philosopher. He was an academic. Well, philosophers are generally academics. He was an activist. He was, in a sense, very politically involved. In essence, he was just a person who self-actualized. And that was the purpose of his history, his upbringing. He was a child who thought he was dumb and decided, you know what, I'm going to put this claim to the test, and I'm going to pick up one of the greatest pieces of philosophical literature to have ever existed and self-actualize. Become the best person I can be, and then do the best I can to help the people that I think needs to be helped within my immediate surroundings. I do not care. There is no counter argument to this. But even more so, he was instrumental in the organization and positive outcomes of an entire political movement. Nearly everyone living in the first world today knows of. We all know of the Black Panther Party. One can argue that is because of Huey Newton, that it is because of him. So Newton's history and accomplishments could never be overshadowed, let alone refuted, due to indirect consequences in the efforts of a rogue intelligence agency that was essentially committing treason. Newton was who he was, and in any world, his beliefs, efforts, and actions were admirable. That is it. That is the case. That is the history of Huey Newton. Thank you for your time.